The doors of Providence Municipal Court opened at 10:30 a.m., and 38-year-old Simone Hartwell made a dramatic entrance. Her Valentino suit, 4200, was perfectly tailored, and her Jimmy Choo heels clicked sharply on the marble floor. Her locks were styled in an elegant updo with gold accessories, and she carried a Hermes Kelly bag worth at least $15,000. Behind her walked an attorney in an expensive suit, carrying a thick briefcase and an iPad. Simone didn't wait to be called. She walked straight to the defense table, checking her Rolex Datejust, $12,000, and making a show of her impatience. Before we dive into what happened in that courtroom, if you believe in justice and want to support a new channel dedicated to sharing these powerful stories, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Every subscription helps us bring more of Judge Caprio's wisdom to light. The bailiff called the case, The People versus Simone Elizabeth Hartwell, case number 2024 TRF 16234. Charges: illegal parking in handicapped zone, verbal harassment of a police officer, and obstruction. Total fines: $850. Simone's attorney, a polished man named Gregory Morrison from Morrison & Associates, stepped forward immediately. Your Honor, before we proceed, I need to address a procedural matter regarding evidence in this case. We're requesting that certain video evidence be excluded on privacy grounds. Judge Frank Caprio looked up, his 37 years of experience immediately sensing something unusual. Mr. Morrison, what video evidence are you referring to? Officer Thompson's body camera footage, Your Honor. My client has privacy concerns about its use in court proceedings. Mrs. Hartwell, please approach the bench. Simone walked forward with exaggerated confidence, placing her expensive bag on the defense table like a statement. Your Honor, I really don't understand why we're here. This is completely overblown. I parked in a spot for 10 minutes, while I ran into a boutique. The parking enforcement officer was completely out of line. Mrs. Hartwell, the report says you parked in a handicapped space without a permit. It was the only spot available. The regular spots were all taken. I was just running in quickly to pick up a custom order, a Chanel handbag that cost $8,000. I couldn't exactly leave that sitting at the store, could I? I made a practical decision. Judge Caprio leaned forward. A handicapped parking space is reserved for people with disabilities who need close access to buildings. It's not for convenience. Simone waved her hand dismissively. I understand that, but there was no one else using it. No handicapped person was being inconvenienced. I checked. So really, what's the harm? The spot was just sitting there empty. The law doesn't require the space to be in use for it to be illegal to park there without a permit. Well, maybe the law needs to be more practical. But that's not even the real issue here, Your Honor. The real issue is how I was treated by that parking officer. She was incredibly rude and disrespectful. She actually had the audacity to lecture me about the law. Me! As if I don't know my rights. What happened when the parking officer approached you? Simone's voice took on an indignant tone. She came up while I was getting back to my car and started writing a ticket immediately. No warning, no chance to explain. I told her I was only going to be a minute, that I was picking up something valuable, and she completely dismissed me. So yes, I may have raised my voice a bit, but she provoked it with her attitude. What happened next would shock everyone in the courtroom. Judge Caprio picked up a tablet. Mrs. Hartwell, your attorney is requesting that we exclude body camera footage from these proceedings. But I'd like to understand what's on that footage before I make any ruling. Officer Thompson was wearing a camera during this incident. Let's watch it. Simone's attorney jumped up. Your Honor, I must object. This footage was obtained without my client's knowledge or consent. Officer Thompson was wearing a clearly visible body camera as required by department policy. There's no expectation of privacy in a public parking lot. The objection is overruled. Play the video. The courtroom monitor lit up. The timestamp showed October 25th, 11:15 a.m. The footage showed a Tesla Model X, $110,000, parked in a clearly marked handicapped space with blue painted lines and a prominent sign. Parking Enforcement Officer Lisa Thompson approached the vehicle and began writing a citation. Then Simone emerged from a nearby boutique, carrying shopping bags. Her voice came through clearly. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" "Ma'am, I'm citing your vehicle for parking in a handicapped zone without proper identification. I was only inside for 10 minutes. This is ridiculous." "Ma'am, the time doesn't matter. This space is reserved for people with disabilities." Simone's voice rose sharply. "Do you know who I am? I'm Simone Hartwell. My family owns 3 businesses in this city. We pay more in taxes than you probably make in a year." Officer Thompson remained professional. "Ma'am, that doesn't change the parking violation. You know what? I want your name and badge number. This is harassment. I'm going to call my attorney and have you written up for this. Actually, better yet, I'm going to call your supervisor right now and have you reassigned to somewhere you can't bother real taxpayers." "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job. Your job is to serve people like me who actually contribute to this city, not to waste time on petty nonsense. How dare you embarrass me in public like this?" But what came next was even worse. On camera, Simone pulled out her phone. "I'm recording this now. I want everyone to see how I'm being treated. This officer," she pointed at Officer Thompson's badge. "Officer L. Thompson, badge 2847, is harassing a citizen over a parking space that wasn't even being used." Officer Thompson's voice remained calm. "Ma'am, you're welcome to file a complaint through proper channels, but right now I need to complete this citation." Simone stepped closer, her voice venomous. "You think you have power because you have that little badge and that ticket book. Let me tell you something. People like me decide whether people like you keep their jobs. One complaint from me, one word to the right people, and you'll be begging for a job parking cars instead of ticketing them. Ma'am, you're now interfering with official duties. I'm going to have to call for backup if you don't step back. Call whoever you want. I want this on record. I want everyone to see how parking enforcement in this city treats successful black women. You're probably just jealous that I can afford to shop in places you've never even heard of." At that moment, Officer Thompson activated her radio. "Dispatch, I need a unit at the corner of Westminster and Weybosset. I have a situation with an uncooperative citizen." Simone's voice hit a shriek. "Uncooperative? You're calling for backup because I'm standing up for myself? This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a power trip. You're on a power trip because you can't handle a strong, successful woman calling you out." A police officer arrived, Officer James Mitchell. The body camera captured his approach. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down and step back from Officer Thompson." "I will not calm down. This is discrimination. I'm being targeted because—" "Ma'am, you're being cited for a parking violation. Please provide your license and registration." "I want my attorney. I'm not providing anything until my attorney is present. And I'm recording all of this. This whole department is going to hear about how you people operate." The video ended. The courtroom was completely silent. If Judge Caprio's compassion moves you like it moves millions of others, show your support by subscribing to our channel. We're just starting out, and your subscription means everything. Simone stood at the defense table, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Her attorney was frantically typing notes on his iPad. Judge Caprio set down the tablet and looked at Simone for a long moment. "Mrs. Hartwell, that video shows you threatening Officer Thompson's job, claiming you'd have her reassigned, and refusing to comply with a lawful citation. Is that accurate?" "I was upset. She was being completely unreasonable. I told her it was only going to be a few minutes, and she wouldn't even listen." "You told Officer Thompson that people like you decide whether people like her keep their jobs. What did you mean by that?" Simone lifted her chin. "I meant that taxpayers like me have a right to expect professional service. If parking enforcement officers are going to harass citizens over minor infractions, we have a right to file complaints. You also threatened to have her begging for a job parking cars instead of ticketing them. That was just... I was expressing my frustration. It wasn't a real threat." "It sounded very real on that video, Mrs. Hartwell. You also accused Officer Thompson of targeting you because you're a successful black woman. Do you have any evidence that race or success had anything to do with this citation?" Simone hesitated. It felt like discrimination. The way she approached me, the way she wouldn't listen to reason. Officer Thompson approached your vehicle because it was illegally parked in a handicapped space. She wrote the citation because that's her job. Nothing in that video suggests discrimination. What it does suggest is that you believed your wealth and status should exempt you from parking laws. That's not what You specifically told Officer Thompson that she should serve people like you who actually contribute to this city. You told her she was wasting time on petty nonsense. You threatened her job. Those aren't the words of someone who believes they were discriminated against. Those are the words of someone who believes they're above the law." Simone's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, my client's behavior was regrettable, but it doesn't change the underlying issue. The parking violation was minor, and the response was disproportionate." "Mr. Morrison, your client didn't just commit a parking violation. She obstructed an officer, made threats, and created a public disturbance. And now you've attempted to suppress video evidence that shows exactly what happened. Why did you request that evidence be excluded?" Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, my client has a public profile. She's concerned about how this footage could be used." "Mr. Morrison, are you a member of the Rhode Island Bar Association?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then you know that attempting to suppress relevant evidence without legitimate legal grounds is a serious ethical issue. Mrs. Hartwell, did you instruct your attorney to try to exclude this video?" Simone glanced at her lawyer, then back at the judge. "I asked him to explore all options to protect my reputation, including suppressing evidence that shows your actual behavior. I didn't want that video shown because I knew how it would look out of context." "Mrs. Hartwell, I just watched that video. There's no context that makes your behavior acceptable. You parked illegally. You threatened an officer. You claimed discrimination without evidence. And then you tried to hide the proof." Judge Caprio stood up from his bench. "The standard fine for parking in a handicapped zone is $250. The fine for obstruction is $600. But given your threats to Officer Thompson, your attempt to use wealth and influence to intimidate a public servant, and your attempt to suppress evidence, I'm imposing maximum penalties." "Your Honor, that's not..." "Total fine, $2,500. Additionally, you will complete 60 hours of community service. You'll serve those hours working with the Rhode Island Disability Law Center, learning about the actual needs of people who require handicapped parking spaces." Simone's mouth fell open. $2,500 for a parking ticket? For a parking violation, plus obstruction, plus threatening an officer, plus attempting to pervert justice by suppressing evidence. Yes, $2,500. This is insane. Gregory, tell him this is insane. Her attorney looked miserable. Your Honor, we'll be filing an appeal. File whatever you want. My ruling stands. And Mr. Morrison, I'll be sending a report to the Rhode Island Bar Association Disciplinary Board regarding your attempt to exclude relevant evidence without legitimate legal grounds. They'll determine whether your actions warrant investigation. Morrison's face went pale. Your Honor, I was simply following my client's instructions. You're an officer of the court, Mr. Morrison. Your first duty is to the legal system, not to your client's desire to hide embarrassing evidence. The Bar Association will make its own determination. Simone exploded. You can't report my attorney. He was doing his job. This is a witch hunt. You're targeting me because you broke the law, threatened a public servant, and tried to cover it up. That's why you're here, Mrs. Hartwell. Not because of who you are, but because of what you did. My family will hear about this. We have connections. My uncle is a state senator. Then I'm sure your uncle will be very interested to hear how you conducted yourself. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality as Simone gathered her expensive bag and stormed toward the exit. Officer Thompson stood near the door. Simone tried to walk past, but the officer spoke quietly. Mrs. Hartwell, I hope you'll understand that handicapped spaces exist for people who truly need them. I was just doing my job. Simone stopped, turned, and for a brief moment looked like she might respond. Then she pushed through the doors without a word. But something unexpected happened over the following months. On her first day at the Rhode Island Disability Law Center, Simone arrived in her designer clothes, clearly expecting to sit in an office and answer phones. Director Patricia Chen, who used a wheelchair, greeted her. Mrs. Hartwell, welcome. Today you'll be accompanying me to interview clients about accessibility barriers they face in Providence. I assumed I'd be doing administrative work. You assumed wrong. You're going to meet the people who actually need those handicapped parking spaces you find so inconvenient. That day changed everything. Simone met Marcus, a veteran who'd lost both legs in Afghanistan and struggled to find parking close enough to enter buildings independently. She met Sarah, a woman with MS who'd been late to a doctor's appointment because someone without a permit had taken the only accessible space. She met an 8-year-old boy with cerebral palsy whose mother had to carry him 3 blocks from the only available parking because spaces near the pediatrician's office were constantly occupied by people just running in for a minute. By week 3, Simone had stopped wearing her expensive clothes to service hours. She started listening instead of talking. She learned about the daily indignities faced by people with disabilities, not just parking, but inaccessible buildings, discriminatory assumptions, and the exhausting work of advocating for basic accommodations. One afternoon, she was helping Patricia review accessibility complaints when she saw a familiar address, the boutique where she'd been shopping that day. A wheelchair user had filed a complaint about the lack of accessible parking. The handicapped spaces were constantly occupied by people without permits. I was part of the problem, Simone said quietly. Patricia looked at her. Yes, you were. But you're here now, learning. That's what matters. When Simone completed her 60 hours, she didn't stop. She started volunteering regularly. She used her business connections, properly this time, to help pressure building owners to improve accessibility. She became an advocate instead of an obstacle. 3 months after her court date, Simone requested a meeting with Officer Thompson. They met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Officer Thompson, I wanted to apologize face to face. What I said to you that day was cruel, classist, and wrong. You were doing your job, and I tried to use my privilege to bully you. I'm sorry. Officer Thompson studied her. Mrs. Hartwell, I've had a lot of people yell at me over parking tickets. Most never apologize. The fact that you're here means something. I've learned a lot these past months about disability rights, about why those spaces matter, about my own entitlement. I was wrong. Completely, thoroughly wrong. 6 months later, Simone's expensive Tesla was sold. She bought a practical used car instead. She'd become a regular donor to the Disability Law Center, and when she saw someone illegally parked in a handicapped space, she'd leave a polite note explaining why those spaces matter, often including her own story. The attorney, Gregory Morrison, faced a Bar Association investigation. He received a formal reprimand for attempting to suppress relevant evidence without legitimate grounds. He learned, the hard way, that following a client's unethical instructions doesn't absolve an attorney of professional responsibility. If this story touched your heart, if you believe judges like Frank Caprio represent the best of our justice system, please support our new channel by subscribing and liking this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that justice and compassion can coexist. Comment below with your city. Let's build a community that believes in fairness for all. 2 years later, Simone Hartwell was known less for her designer bags and more for her disability rights advocacy. She'd started a campaign to increase enforcement of handicapped parking violations, using her story as a cautionary tale. She spoke at community events about privilege, accountability, and the importance of seeing beyond our own convenience. Judge Caprio kept a photo on his desk. Simone working alongside Patricia Chen, both of them reviewing accessibility plans for a new community center. It was proof that sometimes people who fight consequences hardest are fighting their own transformation, and that when they stop fighting and start learning, remarkable change becomes possible. The lesson echoed through Providence, that handicapped parking spaces aren't suggestions for convenience, that threats don't shield you from accountability, and that the courtroom truly is the great equalizer, where designer bags mean nothing and character means everything. Simone walked into that courtroom believing her wealth made the rules optional. She walked out understanding that real privilege isn't about parking wherever you want. It's about having the ability to walk from any parking space at all, something millions of people would give anything to do. That's not just justice, that's transformation.